Hi, this is Prios and I'm a professional gambler. Today we will discuss what makes an elite poker player. And yeah, first you will hear my thoughts, and afterwards I'm very excited to hear Phil Galfond's thoughts about that, one of the best heads up pot limit Omaha players in the world. But let's start with my thoughts. I think the most important thing is grit. And by grit I mean that you are willing to work hard and really put in the hours. I mean, talent is important, but grit is even more important because you can work out talent if you just put in way more hours and not be lazy. And if you are like compassionate and have a passion for the game and love it and want to improve. And yeah, that's the most important thing, that you put in the hours and improve constantly. And yeah, the second one I got on my list is psychological skills, meaning that you are emotional, very stable, but you can, when you are on the table, you should be able to act like a robot. So no emotions should get in your way. I mean, if you get very angry or dissatisfied or upset, this will make your decision-making process worse and you will make suboptimal decisions, and you have to avoid this at all costs. And yeah, even the theoretically best poker player will not make it if he is not able to control his emotions. So psychological skills is number 2. And third, I got on my list risk management ability, or also called bankroll management in poker. So yeah, if you always get into the game where you just have one stack, you will go bust eventually. I mean, even if you are the best guy on the table, luck is also a big factor in poker, especially in the short run. And then you will just not make it because you will run out of money, and without money, you cannot continue to play. And yeah, also, the next points are not that important anymore in my mind, but yeah, they still help. You should have the ability to abstract from the value of money. I mean, if you are an elite poker player, you will start to play in very big games, and you should not think about what you could have bought for the money which you just lost in a single pot. I mean, if you lost a house or a car in like 30 seconds or how long ever the poker the hand took, if you think in this way, it's not helpful at all for your game. It should just be an abstract figure that you try to run up like a high score in a game or something, and you should not think about the money and what you could have bought with it. And next up, it helps tremendously if you are lucky. I mean, when you are moving up to the next limit and have a big downswing and have to go down, I mean, this happens even to the best, then it will take way longer to get to the top, and you will accumulate money and grow your bankroll way slower if you run bad. And you obviously have to run good in some key moments. I mean, if you take risky shots, I mean, I'm not talking about like one stack bankroll management or something, but if you take a risky shot with like 15 stacks only, you should run good, because if you run good, you could double your bankroll or something in one session. But if you run bad, you have to have the ability to stop in time. Like, for example, if you lost like 2 stacks or 3 stacks or whatever. So this is again going back to risk management and bankroll management, and also psychological skills is what I'm going to say. Because you will obviously be upset if you lost huge parts of your roll and that you have to rebuild on limits way, very smaller. And if you can't do that, you will lose it all in this game if you get unlucky. So don't make this mistake. So it helps if you get lucky. I mean, if you are a good player, if you have all the skills mentioned before, you will eventually make it for sure. But it will take way longer if you are unlucky. And what also is insanely important, and maybe even more important than skill and a good work ethic, is your ability to get into good games. I mean, it doesn't matter if you are a bad player if the other guys are even worse. And yeah, that's like the main thing behind it. So if you manage to get in these private games with all these huge whales, you will make money anyways. If you are like the one with the guy with one eye, then all other guys are blind, more or less. So yeah, this is like a metaphor. So if you are, it doesn't matter if you are not the best, if the other guys are terrible. And yeah, game selection, very important. And that's also like, I guess, a social component of the game. And especially if you're playing live, if you can get into these, private games, which helps a lot. Also with the poker apps. I mean, a lot of pros play on poker apps at the moment. And if you get into the juicy good games, and how is it even called, these rooms, or you have to get into the juicy games, and if you are not able to get there, then you will make a lot less money, even if you are like the best guy. I mean, if nobody's playing against you, you can't make money. So yeah, that's what I came up with. I hope this was helpful. By the way, many of these points also help in other things. I mean, in sports, you also need psychological skills and grit, the ability to work very hard. I mean, talent doesn't help. It will be, just the potential which you could achieve. Talent alone is not enough. You need to work very, very, very hard in order to get to the maximum capacity of what you can do. Okay, anyways, we will soon start with what Phil Galfond has to say, but first, let me mention the links below. You find a lot of useful links to stuff that will help you to improve. First and foremost, solvers, very important to get to the next level in poker. Hold'em Manager also helps. I mean, if you got stats on the table about your opponents, you can make better decisions. You can also analyze their game and your game off the table, also very helpful. And yeah, also coaching side, for example, of their guy in the video coming up next, where you can learn a lot. So yeah, consider to check that out. Also consider to check out my other channel. It's about finance, investing, cryptocurrency. It's called Finance with Excel. But without further ado, let's get into the video and listen to Phil Galfond.
Did you know that the top 5% of poker players make 90% of the money? Okay, if I'm being honest, that's not a real stat. They don't track these kind of things very well. I really think that's roughly what it would be if I had to guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all the money flows to the top in poker. That's definitely true. And yeah, I think like probably 90 or 95% of people playing poker probably don't make money at all. I mean, you need to keep in mind that you are not only needed to beat the other player, but you also need to beat the house, the edge, not the edge, the rake. And the rake is very high, especially on lower stakes.
I would love to.
I mean, if you play like 2 cents, 4 cents, the rake is the main factor to beat. I mean, it's like whatever, 50 BB per 100 that you pay in rake. And this is very hard to overcome, even if you play very good. So you need weak players at your table.
Provide you with interesting stats like that, but nobody's doing the studies. Anyways, I'm Phil Galfond. I have been playing professional poker for half my life. I've been playing against the best in the world for over a decade and a half, which is relevant because today my producer, Thomas, asked me about the top 5 qualities that elite poker players have. So if you're interested in learning what makes the best and interested in finding out if you have some of those traits, here we go.
All right, Phil, this is top 5 common traits of winning poker players.
Okay. I like that one. There are actually 2 different ways to take this question, and the way that I'm personally more interested in is top 5 traits of the most successful poker players. We can maybe do a different one another day of traits of winning poker players that are winning at a modest amount. But I'm interested in talking about the elite and what I've noticed because I've played against a lot of elite players and I'm friends with a lot of elite players. I've got more unique insight into that than most people. Top 5 traits of elite poker players. Every elite poker player that I know is really strong with logical reasoning, deductive logic. A really common question is, what areas of intelligence are most important? Is it math? To me, far and away, the answer is logic. And it doesn't necessarily have...
I think that's already a mistake he's making. Sounds like he's talking about talent more or less in this point. And I think it's enough if you like... If you are... What is it? Like... normal intelligent, you don't need to be a genius to play poker. I mean, the logic isn't too hard. The math behind it isn't too hard. And it's just about putting in the hours, mostly. If you have like some threshold you need to reach, obviously, of intelligence, but then it's just getting in the hours. I mean, people with more talent will learn and get the concepts faster, but if you work twice as hard and put in double the hours, you can probably make it even if you are less intelligent than the talented guy.
I took logic in college, but you don't have to have taken a class in it. There are a few different ways to. So one is hand reading is essentially deductive logic. It's, okay, so my opponent's played it this way. This is the range of hands that my opponent has, but here's what I know about my opponent. This kind of eliminates these or makes these less likely. I also know that on this next street, we can remove those, and so on and so forth. And then the more important one...
He also forgets about one major thing. I mean, like 95% or something of hands you play are just automatic. You just learned how to play these. These are standard spots. And you do basically the same thing. It's automatic. You are like a bot. You're just clicking buttons online. I mean, live, it's the same. I mean, it's just a no-brainer very, very often what you got to do. And it's only the 10% of other hands, or 5%, or whatever it is, where you really need to deduct stuff and apply logic.
And the trickier way is, okay, so I know these things about my opponent, either in this individual hand, or also I've looked at stats on my opponent, and I know my opponent's not delay c-betting the turn often enough. Then you have to use logic to figure out the correct counter strategy, because it's not always intuitive. A lot of counter strategies don't involve attacking that leak or that weakness right away, but attacking it on future streets or planning for it ahead of time. So far and away, I think the area of intelligence that's most important is logic. Next one is a huge competitive drive. I can't think of any elite poker players who are not fiercely competitive, at the very least with themselves, but often with other people as well. You'll find a lot of poker pros were college athletes, some professional athletes, and if not...
I mean, that's essentially, I think, what I'm talking about when I say grit. So willing to put in the hour and the work and be very passionate about the thing. So, but yeah, he is, I mean, what does even competitiveness mean? I mean, does it mean that you want to compete against the best? I mean, that's a big mistake in poker. I mean, if you like the third best player in the world and only play against the first and second best, then you will lose money. I mean, that's not, I mean, for me, it's not about playing against tough opponents, but it's about getting into games with weak guys. I mean, there could also be the best player in the world and the second best player in the world sitting at the table. But there has to be a huge whale in order to make up for me probably losing against these two guys. And their whale has to be bad. And I also have a concept called like margin of safety. I mean, I don't want to get in a game with a guy where I'm quite sure that I beat him, but I think the edge is small. I mean, there's no reason to really compete because, I'm not making too much money. Maybe he's even better if I overestimate my abilities. So I want to play against guys where I'm pretty certain that I can beat them. And it's about making money. I mean, that's all these poker YouTubers don't get it. It seems like, or they're just talking shit. Well, I don't know. I don't get it.
College or professional, just very athletic, even in high school. Doyle Brunson was a basketball player.
He doesn't look too athletic, by the way.
Gus Hansen did a few things. Patrick Antonius was a tennis player.
Gus Hansen, terrible poker player, by the way. I mean, even if he's sportive. What's going on?
I think David Benjamin was a tennis player. Is that right? A lot of people from my generation, I mean, Jason Kuhn was a college sprinter. There are a lot that I'm going to forget about, but tons of athletes. And it's not that their athletic talent has anything to do with their poker abilities.
It's more or less their attitude and their general behavior and how they approach things, and but they are willing to work hard. Has nothing to do with competitiveness.
It's that
you have to have this inner thing that you are never okay with what you have achieved. You don't want to get lazy and don't improve anymore. You basically try to be the best player every day, and if you improve, and it's a long road, and you take a lot of incremental small steps and small things you do that makes you the great player. It's not just you have talent and then you are great. No, you have to make all these steps, put in the hours, put in the work, and then eventually you will be great. But you also will never be perfect. You have to work on it constantly. And if you don't work, you will also forget some things, or or some leaks will sneak into your game. And you want to avoid that by being observative, constantly analyzing, trying to be the best you can every day and improve. So you don't want to sit at the table, play only. You need to do theory a lot too.
Competitive drive, that doing what it takes because you have that strong drive to win and to be the best is massively important if you're going to be elite. Next is self-awareness. There are a few elite pros without much self-awareness, but they do get themselves in trouble a lot. Most elite pros are self-aware enough to know when they're in a game that is definitely not good for them. They have enough humility to admit that. They're self-aware enough to know when they're in a good state of mind, and when they're not in a good state of mind, what are the types of thoughts that are going through their head, which lets them get to the root of the issue.
That's like, I think overconfidence and overestimating your own skills is a thing which lead to a lot of players failing. I mean, if you are playing heads up against a guy thinking that he's terrible, but he's constantly making money off you, you are probably terrible, and he figured out what you are doing and he's destroying you. But it happens time and time again that people will get into these huge battle for roles, and one guy will be the guy and ending up bankrupt. And that's what I also mean by psychological skills. Be able to admit to yourself, okay, this guy is better than me, or he's at the moment better than me, I have to stop playing him, or I don't need to play this guy. I don't need to prove to myself that I'm better. It's about making money.
Similarly,
but so self-awareness, definitely a good point.
You just know your weaknesses. People who are not.
I think he should make up more general points and not just like one tiny attribute that people need. And he still didn't talk about the point that you have to put in many, many hours and study and learn. And that's like the most important thing, like for most things in life.
Willing to admit.
Also, if you want to get a great swimmer, you have to put in hundreds or thousands of hours in the swimming pool. That's just about it. And yeah, you have to practice and learn. And also, I forgot about that, by the way. If you have good resources at your disposal, this helps definitely a lot. I mean, Solver, great thing. Or other people, a mentor, a coach, could help you to get better way quicker than doing things and figuring it out on your own. But you will eventually get there if you have the grit you need. So the will to improve constantly and to put in the work needed.
Their weaknesses aren't going to get to improve. upon them. And so when you combine self-awareness and I guess humility a little bit with that fierce competitive drive, you get somebody who is aware of a lot of their weaknesses and works really, really hard to improve upon them.
Works really
Next
hard.
is
finally.
passion for the game. Every elite poker player I know, at least at some point, absolutely is obsessed with poker.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. If you don't love what you are doing, it's very hard to get good, because at some point you will let it slide and you will not put in the work needed. And then you just basically don't have what it takes to be the best, because you are not investing enough time and effort if you don't love what you are doing.
Poker, loved poker, was not just in it to make money, just fascinated with the game. And I think that's what it takes.
Yeah, that's also like the same for me. I don't really enjoy. I mean, I'm not playing poker that much anymore, but I always enjoy the challenge more when I have like a tough hand where I don't know what to do, to figure out what the best way to play it is. And it's not that important. Not that I don't enjoy it that much to be on the table and to play, but to learn new things and get better is like I mean, it's not the end goal that I want to achieve. It's like you have to love the road that gets you there.
To get really, really good, because otherwise it's just a little too boring.
I mean, it's about the journey, not the destination where you want to arrive. So the end goal is to be the best, and the journey is all the little steps that make you better, and better.
And it's a little too hard emotionally if you don't have that love of the game.
By the way, did I sound like a motivational coach? Like some of these guru guys? But yeah, a lot of the things these guys say are true. But I'm not trying to sell you a seminar or something for like a couple of $100. All my content is for free.
I don't believe love of the game can be learned or worked on. I think you either love it or you don't. If you're
this can also change, by the way. I know a lot of guys who loved playing poker in the beginning, but get fed up with it after some time. And I think it happens to everyone to a certain extent.
Here, I think there's a good chance you probably love poker. So that's a good first step. If you do love poker, by the way, subscribe, because I make a lot of videos about poker.
Yeah. Follow me, subscribe, like, all the good things. I mean, most people watch on YouTube. Consider to go to my Twitch and Twitter as well. So a little advertisement break.
Yeah, loving poker is a prerequisite for becoming elite. All right, so I'm struggling with a fifth, so I'm gonna kind of cheat and do 3 smaller ones, which I think are not as important as the other 4 things that I've listed. Intelligences in math and psychology, not necessarily, clinical psychology. You don't have to have studied psychology, but an interest in understanding and how people think. Lastly, empathy, which is similar to psychology, but I think being able to empathize with other players helps you get inside their head more than just a general idea of how people think. Most elite players have some...
I think that's like summarized under one point. It's like reading people is what he's trying to put together.
Combination of these. For what it's worth, the math in poker is not very complicated. You just need to, like, high school level math is as far as you need to go, but you need to be pretty good at high school level math. You need to have an aptitude, I think, for math. And that's true almost without exception. There are a few.
I think the poker math, anyone of standard intelligence can learn. It's not that hard.
Excellent players who I've encountered who are not great at math. So if you're not, it doesn't mean it's the end of the road for you. And certainly a lot of good players who are not great at math. But most of the elite players I can think of have a good math aptitude. You don't need to have taken, I don't know, college level calculus or beyond that. But it helps if numbers come easily to you. I'll put it that way. Psychology and empathy, I guess I've already talked about, but it's essentially, so much of poker is understanding yourself, which is in self-awareness, and understanding your opponents, empathizing with your opponents, thinking about the desires they might have and how that affects their play, the fears they might have and how that affects their play, thinking about what type of thought process might lead them to play the way you've observed them playing. Because if you can take a good guess at that, you can then extrapolate to other situations, and with what you know about them based on the way they've played a few hands, what your guess is. I mean, based on the way they play a lot of hands, if we're going to say no about them, you can take some better guesses at the way they would play different hands, and especially things that they would not do.
Yeah. So what he's saying is discover reads on your opponents and use them to your advantage. And yeah, there are also tools that help you, like Hold'em Manager. Because yeah, if you don't pay enough attention, you have all these stats, and these stats are way more detailed than you could gather the information yourself. Especially if you're multi-tabling, it's hard to keep up. And yeah, Hold'em Manager is the program to do it. Or Poker Tracker, it's basically the same program. I mean, it's from the same company. Depends on your preferences, what you like the most. But yeah, highly recommended. But keep in mind, it's not allowed on all sites. Yeah, some don't allow it. But at least you will be able to import your hands and analyze your own game afterwards. So for this alone, it's worth the money.
Another thing that didn't make the top 5, because I think it's captured in some of the other traits, is how you deal with adversity. Elite players deal with adversity and downswings very well. And it's super important because downswings happen all the time. So if you're interested in hearing more about that,
yeah, that's also summarized on my point, psychological skills.
And how I deal with downswings, I have a video that I worked very hard on that, which should show up around here.
Okay, I think we are at the end of the video. Thank you, Phil Galfond. Which list did you like more, mine or his? I personally like mine more, but yeah, I am biased, obviously. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, share, and I will also put a video on there which you might be interested to watch next. Yeah. Good luck at the tables. Bye-bye.